Hello and welcome to Nut Time. This is the fourth video in a series where I take a look back at Treyarch's zombie maps. Today we're looking at a map featured in the final DLC release for World of War on August 6th, 2009. This map takes place at a German weapons research and development factory called Waffenfabrik near Breslau. Taking place in October 1945, the site has been abandoned and is now overrun by the undead. Prior to this, it was the base of operations for Group 935, a research group run by head scientist Dr. Ludwig Maxis, alongside Richtofen and a handful of other scientists. Their aim? To study the mysterious element 115 in an attempt to aid the Nazis win the war. Within these videos, I usually begin discussing the mechanics of a map before moving on to the story. However, I will be integrating these two elements much more closely than before. This marriage of the two aspects mirrors the map itself, and is an idea that Riese solidifies for the mode moving forward. Unlike Shi no Numa, we return to more of an urban map, whose design and layout is lifted from the multiplayer map Nightfire. Many of the mode's systems make the return here, the power switch, perks, electric traps, and even the Wunderwaffe from the Shi no Numa map. In fact, Riese is where this wonder weapon was originally designed and manufactured by none other than Richtofen as a prototype weapon for the German army.
As you know, early tests on the DG2 have easily outperformed expectations, and we fully anticipate mass-producing the Wunderwaffe within the next few years. But in the meantime, I will continue with the work here and try to win this damned war. Signed, etc., Dr. Maxis.
Hellhounds make the return here, and in fact, they make their return home, as this is where they were initially created, in a similar fashion to the zombies themselves. Richtofen was responsible due to experimentation on a dog named Fluffy. Fluffy was owned by none other than Samantha Maxis, the young daughter of head scientist Dr. Ludwig Maxis. These two characters, along with Richtofen, became very important for the story of the mode moving forward, and so I'll be referring to them simply as Dr. Maxis and Samantha, or Sam, as this is how they were known for the majority of the Ether storyline. Riese is certainly a pivotal map in terms of story and design, and there's three smaller additions I want to make note of before moving on to design choices with larger implications. The Carpenter Drop. This hammer would repair all barriers on the map, however it was often ignored as it acted as a temporary slowdown for the zombies. The Monkey Bomb. Another Richtofen's inventions that consisted of a modified toy of Samantha's. This bomb would attract zombies for a short time before blowing up, allowing the player a brief period of relief. The Bowie Knife. A 3000 point upgrade to your knife, increasing damage roughly 10 times. With increasingly larger and complex maps, running wouldn't always quite cut it. As mentioned in the Shi no Numa video, it was clear the developers were experimenting with travel options, and this evolution of the travel mechanic came in the form of teleporters. These matter transferring devices, or MTDs for short, were much more important than most realised at the time, both mechanically and the implications they had on the story. To initiate these three teleporters around the map, they would first need to be linked with the mainframe in the spawn room. Running from an MTD to the mainframe within 30 seconds of activation would successfully turn that teleporter on. Once active, they could be used at any time as a quick escape.
What? Right.
Now we have pack punch open.
Nice. We have to wait though, don't we?
Looks bloody jazzy.
Activating all three of these teleporters would open a chamber in spawn. In it lay the famous pack punch machine. Fitted with its own catchy jingle, this machine would upgrade the player's weapon for 5,000 points, increasing damage and altering other traits such as ammo count and fire rate. Acquiring a pack punch allowed for extra progression beyond simply surviving, in turn heightening replayability of the map.
Pack a punch. Pack a punch.
These MTDs came with their own backstory. As previously mentioned, Group 935's purpose here at Riese was exploring the potential uses of Element 115. Alongside the creation of experimental weapons and elixirs came teleportation, an idea that the developers drew from real-life Nazi conspiracies. Both Maxis and Richtofen worked on these MTDs. However, after only having moderate success, Maxis realised that the MTDs could reanimate corpses. Thus, he shifted his focus on creating an undead army for the Nazis. At this point, a divide would begin to grow between Maxis and Richtofen. Richtofen continued MTD experiments behind Maxis's back, eventually using himself as a test subject, which began his descent into madness. More on this later. For now, let's fast forward a year or two. Richtofen wants Maxis out of the picture, and one day spots an opportunity to get his wish. During the experimentation on Sam's dog, Fluffy, Richtofen seals Maxis and Sam in the MTD chamber and activates it.
What? Edward, what are you doing? Open the door! Edward, open this door now!
I'm scared.
Don't go! Stay by me, Samantha! Goodbye, Dr. Maxis.
Maxis is teleported to a place known as the Crazy Place, and Sam ends up at Griffin Station, Group 935's secret moon base. Here she comes into contact with the Moon Pyramid device. More on this later. After interacting with it, she becomes corrupted with the Dark Ether and assumes control of the zombies, unleashing them upon Richtofen and his associates. Many radios around the map help tell this story to the player, and was really our only knowledge back then in 2009. This brings us up to current events at Riese. Richtofen awakens the 3 test subjects and convinces them to assist him with his grand scheme. To dispose of Samantha and take control of the ether. They travel to Shinonuma, grab Richtofen's diary, and head to Riese, where he plans on using the MTD to reach the moon base once again. Again, this does not go to plan. The Wunderwaffe overloads the MTD, sending our Ultimus crew through time and space. They end up at Group 935's abandoned Kino facility in Berlin in the year 1963. This is the point where World at War ends and Black Ops 1 begins for our crew. For us as the player, it would be over a year before we saw the next map. However, for the developers, it wasn't so long. Black Ops launch map Kino der Toten was initially planned for the release on World at War, alongside a Paris map which was repurposed for Black Ops 1's 4th map.
And then, a little known fact, or a fact that's kind of discussed a little bit, is we were starting to write stuff for a DLC 4 at the time as well, so create stuff as well. And that's where you'll hear about like Paris and Coast and a cinema, and that got re-adopted into Kino, and then the Coast map got turned into Call of the Dead, and then the Paris map got turned into Moon.
Back in the day, I remember hearing endless speculation of a 4th map. The one I had always heard was an Area 51 styled map with underground bunkers and a harpoon wonder weapon. Interesting how some of these elements became somewhat true. Before I close out this video, I want to briefly discuss Richtofen. His actions prior to teleporting Maxis sets up the Ultimus' journey throughout the next game. As previously mentioned, Richtofen ends up using himself as a test subject. The MTD teleports him to the moon, where he comes into contact with the Ether Pyramid, or Moon Pyramid device, known as the MPD for short. After touching it, he begins to hear a mysterious voice in his head and suddenly teleports to a jungle. Quickly driving himself insane, he returns to Riese after 3 weeks in the jungle and instructs Dr. Schuster to build a facility on the moon in the hopes of reaching the MPD once again. Although brief, this more or less covers his journey prior to Samantha taking control of the ether. One last thing before I conclude. Riese is littered with various Easter eggs, radios, scrap paper, and the return of a musical Easter egg. However, most notably, we see a larger Easter egg for the first time. Not quite the quest-style Easter eggs that we are used to today, but definitely the beginnings of one. It's called the Flytrap Easter egg. Shooting this panel with a pack-punched weapon will cause Samantha to send the players on a game of hide-and-seek to look for her toys around the map. There is no reward for completion, but it's interesting and noteworthy nonetheless. I've talked a lot about the story in this one, but I think it's quite important as it sets up Ultimus' journey for the next batch of maps. It can become quite confusing due to the time and space travel, but it's worth noting that it wasn't planned this way. Many details were retconned or changed later to fit this feature of the storyline. This was still the beginnings of a story, so a lot of it was left up to the player's imagination back in 2009. However, it's interesting to see how it all fits in down the line. For me, this is the beginning of my favourite era, both in terms of map design as well as the intriguing and more speculative storytelling. The Riese became an instant fan favourite for people to replay over and over, and it's easy to see why. New, more powerful weapon options, one of the most iconic camping spots in the catwalk, and new additions like teleporters all came together to create a map that still holds up today as one of the top tier maps. Adding in the rumblings of a storyline, it's easy to see why this addicting map is the definition of simple yet effective. Thank you for watching. As with the Shinonuma video, there will be a more chilled out gameplay up on the channel if you want to sort of check that out and get a more of a feel for the map and how it plays. Hopefully I can progress onto the next Zombies video soon with the beginning of the Black Ops maps, probably my favourite era of maps, so I'm quite excited about those ones. So yes, until next time, thanks again and have a good one.